We have several things on the agenda today. Thank you for all of the members for being here. Can I have a motion to approve the January 20th, 2022 minutes, which is in your packet, please? I have a motion. Second, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Today's agenda items. Wait a minute. We're missing one. Where's David? Two. They're coming though, right? Okay. So they're not on the agenda until later on. So we'll go ahead and start, and hopefully they will catch up with us. First agenda item is the charter investment update. Nick, I think that's you. If you guys want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for gathering the group here today. It's always very beneficial. We started some work with vendors as far as make-ready goes, poll exchanges if we have to. We're working with, various vendors along the way. So, it's a long, tedious process to get that, to get all that work done, but we're at least here and working. And I know we're working, we're going to begin over in East Bradley County when we start for the RDOF. And so we're already doing some, going ahead and digging the underground where we can, where we don't have to wait on the poles and what have you. So, hopefully we'll start actual construction soon, and it'll push into 2023 before we're completely done. But the time is here. We're finally, showing some real progress.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Pavlis as we're talking about charter investments? Yes, Commissioner Cry.
I don't know if it's really a comment, question or not. I have a constituent that lives off Upper River Road. Their property, I think, lies on both Bradley and Polk County line, and they called me and wanted to know what in the world is Charter or Spectrum, whatever they're going by today, digging up here. So I didn't know who to call. I did call over there and couldn't get a proper response to the local office. No problem. We're just glad to have you in the area. But apparently it's right on Upper River Road, Polk County, Bradley County line. These people live on the Bradley County side, and they were curious as to what's going on. I couldn't answer them.
Well, that's the start of the.
That's the start of what you're talking
yes,
about.
Sir. If they're up there doing, if they're boring and what have you, going underground, that would be it.
That's what I'll get back in touch. But we're just glad that's one of those areas you don't have anything. Nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's going to be thrilled. Because we've had it brought in on the other end of another firm on Upper River Road, and no one's allowed to. They won't let anybody connect unless they pay some longest fee. But that's several years back. But I'll tell them that. They'll be very happy.
Yeah. And you can go on the RDOF map and actually put in exact addresses, and it'll bring up that exact address.
Okay. What was that?
RDOF.
RDOS?
F.
RDOF. .com?
Yes. Or .org. It'd be one of the other.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlis. The second agenda today is our volunteer energy cooperative grant update from David Murphy.
Can everyone hear me? So in Bradley County, we turned in 4 applications for the ARP funds. We were notified that 2 of our applications were selected as finalists, the Bradley 01 and Bradley 02 applications. So I've handed everyone a map with some polygons on it. The polygons that are in the grayish color, those are our existing service footprint. And the two sets of polygons that are in red, those are the finalist areas as they were initially submitted. And so one of the two finalist areas would connect our existing pilot in the Hopewell area with the service that we provide on Ooltewah-Georgetown Road and create one large contiguous zone of service in western Bradley County, northwest Bradley County. And the other area, the Bradley 02, is the one there on the eastern side of the county. It's in the Chatta Valley area. And so both of those have made it through to the finalist round. As I understand it, the state actually progressed 460 million worth of applications into the finalist round, and then they had some of the applications withdrawn so that they only have 300 and I think they said 96 million worth of applications in the finalist round. So they have 400 million worth of funding to put toward those applications. So essentially what that tells me is that these two will be awarded unless something strange were to happen. So we look,
1 and 2 will be awarded, but are we hopeful that maybe 3 and 4 will as well?
so what they told us, there would essentially be about $4 to $5 million left over that didn't have an allocation because they lost those 60 million worth, and they said that they would be picking out another application to try and use up those funds. But the reality is the chances of us being awarded one from that $4 to $5 million is slim, just because that would be us against every other application that didn't make it through the finalist round, which was the vast majority of those. So there is a possibility, but I think the possibility is small. But anyway, we did turn in a response because there were a few areas of overlap with Charter and Comcast, and so we removed those from our area. And so the budget was amended downward to make up for that difference. So the total finalist budget as amended would be $7.79 million, meaning that the Bradley County 10% match would be right at $780,000. And Aaron Hood is coming, and he's got the maps of the areas 3 and 4 with him. I didn't bring those with me, Adam, but Aaron's got those, and he is on his way. He's late because of me, because I had him pick up the map.
So when do we think that they're going to have this award announcement? Because I know that it's been pushed back several times.
They've pushed it back repeatedly, but we received an email at the first of last week saying that they would be announcing awards the week of August 29th. So next Monday, probably. That's my expectation.
So looking past this, for other opportunities to continue expanding broadband, what is the timeline for the next ECD grant?
I don't know that they've given a timeline yet. Have you heard one?
I haven't heard, I haven't.
They have said that they're looking to increase the funding next year again, but typically they do an announcement of the timeline, I think in the spring, for a June typically a May-June application, something like that. So we're probably still several months out.
So again, in terms of looking towards the future, we know that this was the second largest bucket that we designated for ARP funds. And so we have $4 million set aside for broadband expansion in Bradley County. And it sounds like if you are awarded the 1 and 2 grants, that's going to be $780,000. We had budgeted for this round 1.8 million, so that puts, I guess, 1.1 million back into the bucket. So would VEC be willing to partner with the county on a 50-50 match to continue broadband expansion in Bradley County, especially for these 3 and 4 areas over here?
So I talked to our interim CEO about that yesterday and this morning, and there is an interest. So our board of directors meet on Wednesday of this week, and so I've given her the same information that I've provided to all of you, just to give them an idea of how much that would be. In the past, VEC has done a 50-50 match for some of the other funding options, so I think they are inclined to probably want to do this, but I can't speak for them. It would be Wednesday before we'll have an answer, but I think so, yes.
So say we were able to partner with you, just hypothetically, for the rest of the money in the bucket. Um, can you tell us how many homes we could provide service to with that money?
Yeah, so I've outlined on this page here where it says the non-finalists there toward the bottom. And so if we were to do the Bradley 03 area as it was drawn up, that would be 906 electric meters. So not all 906 of those are going to be houses. Some might be commercial businesses. Some might be like a person who has a meter on the house and a meter on the garage. But I would say at least 90% of those are going to be residences. But there's 906 electric meters inside of that footprint. If we did the Bradley 04, same thing, it would be 1,195 meters inside of that footprint. So roughly 1,000 or more.
So so total, if we were able to partner with you on a 50-50 match, we had the potential of reaching over 2,000 people with broadband expansion.
If you wanted to do both projects, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And those are meters. So if you're actually talking about population, that's just addresses. So it'd actually be a lot more people than just the number of addresses.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Blake.
Thank you. Back to Bradley 01 and Bradley 02 projects. I like that you're optimistic about that. If all goes well and total approval and funding's everywhere, will these projects be done in parallel or sequentially? In other words, you got to do one and then start on the other, or can you do both at the same time?
I think the plan is to do both at the same time. We're facing supply chain issues, of course, that everybody's dealing with, but because we've been building broadband in the area for several years now, we've actually built up a stock of some fiber. So it won't take us as long to start on this as perhaps it would if we didn't have that fiber in stock. Lead time on fiber right now, I think, is somewhere around 50 weeks.
Right.
So if we didn't have enough fiber to do these, we would have to order that fiber, and then you're looking at almost a year before the material would come in. So we do have some material in stock that would help enable us to go ahead and begin, but the plan would be to utilize what we can in order to get the project started, but the idea is to start both projects concurrently.
Start both of them. I was just wondering if one had to happen before the other one.
No.
We've talked about this a couple of times, is that as we go forward, all the infrastructure that you put in the equipment and devices, recognize economies of scale. In other words, you eat up a lot of your cost already here. It makes it, where's my grammar? It makes it cheaper for others to do but how much of the north part of Bradley County is left open for, development instead of heading south Bradley County?
I would say there's quite a bit. Of course, Charter, I think, has got a large sum of that RDOF money, which should capture, I think, some Bradley County up in the northern part. But so the service in the Bradley 01 area, we've already got the corporate office frame installed in our Hopewell substation, which is right off of Bixby Creek Road. And so we've got the electronics needed to serve the Bradley 01 already in place. The Bradley 02, we do not. So the electronics for Bradley 02 would go in the Tasso substation, and so we would have to purchase and install those, and so, there would be a bit of a delay in getting that part of the puzzle up and running where we wouldn't have to deal with it in the Bradley 01. So I guess I'm saying all that to say this: Bradley 01 would be a little bit easier to build out than Bradley 02 just because we have some of the infrastructure in place already.
And those are growth areas. Obviously, you'll be designing for houses and corporations that aren't even there yet.
Yes.
They'll be able to come in and plug into the network.
Yeah,
and
so
hit the ground running.
We have a really refined idea of how many addresses can fit inside of that service footprint, and so our design includes a fiber for all future properties as well as those that exist.
The state was doing grants way before COVID happened. They had their program. I think Bradley County was one of the initial ones right there, and you've done others in other counties like that. So this is all because of I guess we call it the COVID, the ARP money or whatever nice title you want to give it. And then this gets used up, expended, and then the state, from what I understand, is going back to their program of granting out money on a yearly basis. I guess that to say is that your understanding as well?
So from what I've heard, there is more federal dollars coming down that the state will be deploying, just like they've done with the ARP money. Don't hold me to this, but just what I'm hearing through the grapevine is that the amount that they plan to give out next year is greater than what they've given out this year, by more than a factor of 2.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
I know there's a lot that's still up in the air. You said your board's meeting this week, so you don't have definitive answers. But would the chair entertain a motion to recommend to the full commission that we begin to look at opportunities to partner with VEC on a 50-50 match?
Sure,
Yes.
yes, I would
I'd like
love
to
that.
make that. I'd like to make that motion then. No specifics, obviously, because if there's 10.2 million to complete those two, 50/50's 5.1, we've only have, assuming that projects 1 and 2 go through, we'll still have $3.2 million in that bucket. So we couldn't do all of those 2 projects, but we could certainly take a good whack at them. So I'd like to make a recommendation with no specific dollar amounts, but that we recommend to that this committee recommends to the full commission to begin to look at what that might look like down the road.
Aaron should be here momentarily if you want to see those maps before you make that decision. But he is bringing some maps that give you a footprint just like this that will show you what those 2 areas encompass.
If I may, would that be open to all providers?
If you would be willing to give us a map of your service footprint, yes, like VEC has, absolutely.
Okay.
Did I have a motion and a second? Did anybody want to wait to look at the maps for 3 and 4, or we pretty much know where these areas are?
That'd be fine. I'm fine with that.
All right, I have a motion and a second to have discussion at the full commission about partnering with all providers in terms of a 50-50 match to extend broadband in Bradley County. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion passes. County schools parking lot.
I've-
Yes.
A question related to maps. I think at our last meeting, we talked about the fact that the state maps, revised, updated, better maps are supposed to come out sometime in this time frame. Do we have a status of that?
The last time I checked, the state website has a permanent page set up that links you to the state map, and then when I log into that page to look at the map is not on it. When you try to click the hyperlink that takes you to the map, it prompts you to use a username and password to log in and see it. I have seen the map. It was up and available for public comment for a period of about a month or 2. But since that time, they've taken it down, and I've not been able to access it. Of course, I have not looked in the past month or so. So it may be available right now, and I don't know. But the last time I checked, you couldn't see it. So I know they're still working on it, and they're making some updates to the map, but I don't have an update as far as how long it will be before it's publicly available.
And will that map, when it is finally finalized, I guess, will that be the basis of future applications and grants for all companies, VEC, Charter, whoever?
That's my understanding for the state funds.
Okay.
I don't think that they'll be usable for the federal dollars. Typically, the federal programs require use of the FCC map. But I would assume that for all the future state funding opportunities, they would use the state map. Or at least that's my understanding.
And do we have a status on the FCC maps being updated?
I know they're updating them, but I have no idea where that's at.
Okay.
And to be frank, I have no faith that they'll be any better when they're done. So.
I was thinking.
No, I did on the timeline. So, what you mentioned, there was that public comment period that closed sometime in July. And so ECD has said that they would release their updated map in its final form fall of '22. That was as specific as they got.
I got a thought. So, since we're going to be able to put Nick in the middle of this as well, as far as for, making an opportunity for Spectrum and for VEC to actually get the funding, for us to do like a match. What if there was a way that we could actually get the people that are going to be served to be able to throw a little skin in the game, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? So like, see if they would want to privately donate or whatever to that project.
The county has a grant system that we use already for water, and then we're also going to use that for sewer. So the commission would have to be open to folding broadband into that group as well.
I would think the challenge there would be, how do you run broadband down a road? If I'm Spectrum or any provider, how do I run? I would need 100% participation. In other words, if I wanted it, Erica didn't, and you did, are we just going to skip her? And how does that work? And what's the cost? I would think they'd need to have 100% participation. But I do like the idea. Yeah, and we can't require it.
Sorry. We had that I'm sure it applies to pretty much any service out there at the first district. The pastor, I forget his name, he tried to get some of his neighbors involved, and they basically said, no, at this time, so he funded the whole thing. But after it got put in, then they were allowed to tie in. So basically, they let him absorb all the cost, and then, in my opinion, took advantage of the fact that they didn't have to put any money up front. But you can't make them do it.
So that's pretty much what we deal with Spectrum on a lot of bases. Like, so if they're going to build out, like whenever we have, so my coverage area is big, so I deal with Spectrum on a big area, like 4 different states. So like in Knoxville, for instance, we actually had a client that needed service because they had a mini warehouse that was on Campbell Station Road. They were like, okay, if you'll put service at Mabry Hood, then we'll do the Campbell Station Road, and we'll just bundle this thing up, and you won't have any money out of pocket because it actually provided service for so many years on a contract basis. So they didn't have to fund anything. But then we have other clients that have like Comcast, for instance. They dumped $25,000 out of pocket to bring internet service off of Highway 64 into Welcome Valley Village. Then they sold the property afterwards. But now then that opened it up to where they could actually have internet for a few of the rafting companies and stuff up the road, for them. So I guess that's kind of like what we would bump into with this, what you're saying.
Any other questions? At the end. Yes, thank you. Other questions? All right. Next on the agenda is the county schools parking lot Wi-Fi update, and I'm going to let Mr. Lewis talk about where we're at with the current status of this grant.
So like a lot of sectors, there are supply chain issues, especially in technology. And so while the money has been available for several months now, the equipment itself that's needed at the schools is not available. At last check, it looks like it'll be December or January at the earliest. Some of the, and that's actually pretty good. Initially in conversations, it was going to be June of next year. So I appreciate the effort to try to source that as quickly as possible. One of the things that was suggested too by, so remember that this is a ThreeStar grant. This is ThreeStar is a program through the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, the same department that manages the funds for these grants that we've talked about. And it was suggested by my contact that we take a look at the accessibility grant that's about to come out. And what I was told is that that could be announced as early as September. And that's not the same grant that we're applying for now and waiting on word. This is one that we've looked at before, and it is state funded. September announcement, typically a early first of the year deadline to apply, and then sometime in spring for that announcement. What was suggested was that, as was mentioned, there's going to be quite a bit more money in that bucket or in that pile from the state this year, and so they'll be looking for opportunities to spend that and invest that. But as a county, and I'm not suggesting I want to do this, but as a county, we can apply for funding from that specific grant program as well. It's not just a utility or a provider that can do that. And the project that we're waiting on equipment for is the type of project that falls into that accessibility vein, if you will. So one of the things, I think when we first talked about this a year ago, we had hoped to try to provide access, Wi-Fi access to the community, to the public, through similar hotspots at our fire halls. And that turned out to be a little more expensive than what the grant would cover. So an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and look at items like that. I'm not suggesting this, but one of the examples that was given to me was providing free guest Wi-Fi in your downtown area, for instance. Again, all under the vein of accessibility. And so the fact that we have an open, already funded grant project, they suggested that we maybe look at ways to piggyback and sort of expand that, and that we would actually sort of have a leg up with the scoring on that second application, because we already have an open project that could be piggybacked on. So I'm personally waiting for some more information on that, but maybe at another meeting we can brainstorm, or have some time between now and then to brainstorm for some opportunities to go after some additional money from the state at that next go around.
Does anybody have any other questions? I guess just following up with everything that we've talked about, I know that we've made a motion to do a 50-50 match. Hopefully the commission will approve that. But looking forward, what is up and coming in the next 2 years? Because, say that doesn't pass or something happens, what can we do to use all of this broadband ARP money in the next 2 years? I'll start with Nick and then.
Well,
I would just echo what he said. BEC all along has been utilizing the grants to help defray the cost, because we are just now in our infancy as far as broadband is concerned. We've been doing it for a little less than 5 years. And so we don't have a really big revenue stream. We're trying to essentially provide this at cost to our members just so that they can have access. And so as we've expanded our service footprint, we are building a bit of a revenue stream. And the long-term plan has been eventually to get enough of a revenue stream that we could provide service to areas without the need of a grant. And the reason for that is because the FCC maps have always been so bad. And so there are people who have been excluded from eligibility because of the maps who truly do not have access. And so the only way we're ever going to be able to provide access to them is if we can fully fund it ourselves. And so the restrictions placed on us by the grant opportunities won't allow that. So as soon as we have a large enough revenue stream, we're going to start trying to target areas that don't have access and build those out independently from the grants. We're probably still several years out from that, but we still have plenty of areas that are grant eligible that have not been built into yet that we're going to continue applying for.
Yes, ma'am, we can take your question now.
electric side, the revenue stream, correct?
So the Tennessee Valley Authority is our rate regulator, and so it's not the state law that prohibits us from utilizing electric cooperative revenue. It's Tennessee TVA's regulation that prevents
Okay.
us from doing that.
Okay. Well, the other question I had was, I know that our area, I live off of Banther Road, which is off of Bancroft Road, and a lot of those areas have been waiting for a long time for VEC broadband, but some of those areas are covered, and now my area is, as of a couple years ago, by charter. Is that going to be, are you guys basically trying to avoid stepping on charter's toes and just trying to focus on those?
That is our desire. Part of the problem is designing a system that doesn't, because what we're doing is serving our broadband out of our electric substations. We're putting our electronics inside of the substation house. And in order to get to certain areas, the feeder fiber is going to overlap some of Charter's footprint. And that does not necessarily mean that we're going to provide service. And a lot of the time, there's misunderstanding from the public's perspective. They see us out there running fiber, and it's the feeder fiber that runs from our substation house to the electronics, which are stationed in the middle of the area being served. And people think, oh, well, there's fiber out here now, and that fiber not be used to serve us. Well, not really, because what it's doing is connecting two pieces of electronics. So it's not designed to serve the end user. And then what we will do is backfeed from the electronics, which are in the middle of the area being served. But we're trying to avoid overlapping any of Charter's and AT&T's service areas, but sometimes it happens, not just because we don't know exactly where they are.
So at Banther Road, all of Banther Road from Bancroft around to can't remember the Pleasant Valley or whatever it's called, that whole area has not been served by anything, except for, I guess, some people have satellite.
Yeah.
For a long time, until recently, I live in the Banbury 2 subdivision, and that was just recently serviced by Charter. But you go further down Banther Road, and I don't think they have anything.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a gray area as to.
And I'm going to speculate that may be one of those areas that the FCC map designates as having some type of service. The problem with the FCC map is that they look at very large census blocks.
Right.
And if even one address inside the census block has access, then they say that census block has access, even though it's only maybe one or two addresses.
Right.
I think that's where the state map will help. The resolution of the areas being served is better, and so it'll give us a better idea of who actually does and does not have service. One of the biggest pitfalls of providing broadband, in my opinion, has been our inability to accurately determine who does and does not have service. The maps that are out there are just terrible.
Right, I know.
And so we're trying to target those that are most obviously unserved. But then when we get out in the community and talk to our members, we find out, well, yeah, this large area here is also unserved. But then when you look at the map doesn't indicate that.
Right.
And
yeah.
so it's a challenge for us to find those areas because the maps are not very helpful.
Thank you.
Hey.
Relates based to her question. I'm on Mount Zion Road, about a third of Mount Zion Road service fiber right now. I'm one of them. About 2/3 is not.
Yeah.
But I understand that are available. Does that mean you're going to skip over the remainder of the road?
Our, our plan is to not provide service where charter exists. We're looking, it's actually going to be covered, part of Mount Zion, I think, is covered in the Bradley 01 grant.
Sorry, at the original. Tell me
The Bradley 01 is one of the two grants that's a finalist right now. So we
Right.
should have an answer next week sometime on whether or not that will actually be awarded. I expect it to be.
so, yes, it will be provided, fiber?
We're going to provide fiber. So we actually, part of the public comment period for this Bradley 01 and Bradley 02 grant showed us that there was some overlap. We went out and did a survey to try and identify as best we could where that overlap existed, and we removed those addresses from our design. But in the places where no service existed, that's still included in the design.
So, 2/3 of Mount Zion will not be.
If they already
What I'm
have
hearing you
if they already have service from a different provider, then no.
Item D on the agenda, I think is, it kind of coincided with the county schools parking lot. Am I correct, or did you have something on item D? No. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Blake.
Thank you. Back to that point about servicing where charter, just a point of clarification, it's where charter or spectrum currently or where they can potentially serve. So they may not be serving a part of their quote-unquote territory. That's their, I guess, choice, but it's where they are or where they potentially could, possibly if they chose to, that you're not going to interrupt or compete with them.
So when we got the public comments back, the public comments for this particular grant opportunity, it gave us an idea of where to look for existing fiber optic or coax infrastructure. And so what we did is we went out and drove around looking for it. So anywhere we found it, where we were able to identify it, we essentially circled that part of the map and said, we'll remove that part. Anywhere we did not see it, we did not remove from the design. So I guess the simplest answer to your question is where we saw existing infrastructure, we took it off the design, but not so, like if we were on Mount Zion Road, for example, and fiber was right on Mount Zion and there was a side road that went off that did not have fiber, we didn't remove that side road because it didn't have any infrastructure on it. We would have left it in the design. And that goes back to my point about the feeder fiber. There's going to have to be some overlap to catch that side road, but it's not by design. It's not because we're trying to serve Mount Zion. It's just because that's the only way to get to that side road.
Right, that's a geography kind of thing,
Yes.
it's just the logistics of it, but what is somewhat frustrating is when you have one basically ISP that they've marked out their territory and they only serve certain parts of it. They control all of that territory, but they don't want to serve all that territory, but they won't let anybody else serve that territory. That's, I guarantee that's what's frustrating more people than anything, is those little pockets right there that they're like, okay, I can't get VEC to come in. We understand why you don't want to compete, but we can't get Charter to come in because, they've decided that that's too expensive. Therefore, they're just sitting there looking at each other. So
Yeah.
that's what's disappointing and frustrating to me.
We're doing our best to try and capture those small pockets like you're describing. Unfortunately, we're likely to miss some, but we are trying to find those and get service to them.
But your issue is, that's kind of promoted by the FCC maps. The FCC maps will say, well, if one person is served within a big census block, then that whole block is considered to be served. And that precludes anybody from applying for a grant for that if it's already served, even though 95% of the families there don't have any kind of service. They can't get anybody to come in.
I understand that completely. But I can tell you when you chat with the people out at the Return clubs, they don't give a flip. They just know that somehow, some way, somebody 500 feet away from them has internet, but they can't. And FCC or anybody, they just want internet. They feel like their kids are being left out from curriculum that the public schools are asking them to do. Telemedicine's becoming more popular with the Cleveland State and Lee with their programs. So when the comptroller came into Cleveland a couple of months ago, last year, he made an excellent point that it's no longer a necessity for me to have internet, but I also need you to have internet in order to do commerce. So hopefully we can get this squared away. Hopefully we can find enough money to do it all. But that's what's frustrating. There's still pockets out there, and you got all these ISPs in their little territory. Thank you.
And just to piggyback off of that, that's why I asked for the service footprint. We need a service footprint from Charter, and then we also have been given one from VEC so that we know where they're serving people and where they plan on serving people so that we can partner with them in a better way. So if you can get us that, that would be great. Any other additional questions or comments? Yes, Mr.
I have
Matthews.
a question on the future of this committee. Is the plan for this committee to keep going as it has been, or elaborate
It
on
is.
that? Okay.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Kraft.
Hold on.
I just want to thank everybody for coming today. That concludes our agenda. I do have a couple of closing comments. This has been the number one issue on my radar since taking office. When I ran in 2018, this issue was at the top of the list of concerns when I would be out campaigning. In my 4 years on the commission, that never changed. Not a wink went by that I did not hear from someone in the county that needed reliable, better, affordable broadband access. At my own home in the 6th district, it is a challenge. My family and I struggle every day with not having better internet access. As a business owner, it makes it hard to operate some days because I'm throttling. I know that I am not the only family or business in Bradley County that has this need. Over the last 3 years, we have been meeting. We have all learned the solution to this challenge will not come overnight. We have worked to remove many of the barriers to broadband expansion in Bradley County, and I believe that we are at the cusp of finally seeing some real progress. My only regret is that it has taken so long to get here. We have heard about multiple opportunities today for how we can invest the remaining portion of the $4 million ARP funds. I hope every single dollar of that bucket goes to broadband expansion. This will make a significant impact for the people of Bradley County, and I trust that the next commission will continue to keep this a top priority. I will be leaving the commission after this week, but I am happy to have been reappointed to this committee as a citizen member for the future. I will stay involved and will continue to work hard to see us across the finish line. I want to thank each of you as members of this committee for your hard work and the impact that we've tried to tackle together on this issue. Thank you for your time and your dedication, and I look forward to working with you in the future. If no other comments, the meeting is adjourned.